So let's get some insight. They are here. Our panel is both political veterans and proud Manitobans. Our partisan panel's back. We haven't talked since the election. Dan Vandal, newly retired Liberal MP and former cabinet minister, is in studio. Hey, Dan.
Good morning.
Erin Selby is also here, former NDP MLA and former cabinet minister in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning.
And then Dorothy Dobbie is also in studio, former Progressive Conservative MP and parliamentary secretary. Hello.
Good morning.
So why don't we start with you, Dan? You're the Liberal. It's been a long time since you watched the federal budget come down from the sidelines. What does Mark Carney need to get right tomorrow?
Well, I think it's important to note, first of all, that Canada and the world is living in a new world order. We have a new president of the United States, and we have an American government that's now they're on the same side as the Russians. That has all sorts of implications. It has implications for the North. It has implications for defense spending. And the government and the Prime Minister have already committed to 5% of defense spending of GDP, 5% of GDP of defense spending by 2025. That is a huge number. That needs to begin tomorrow in a significant way. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some spin-offs for the North, specifically Churchill. I'm looking for that in the budget. We also have to diversify our trade, so there has to be initiatives for that in the budget. And we also need to protect our industries against the negative effects of Trump tariffs in the States. So that has to be in the budget. So there's going to be more spending in certain areas, and we're waiting to see what the effects of that are in other areas, reconciliation, the environment, and quality of life issues. They've already announced, federal government has already announced that the school food program is good, it's safe, it's going to be there. That's incredibly positive. I'm looking to see more initiatives that are protected.
Dorothy, from your conservative perspective, what are you wanting in tomorrow's budget, and what are you concerned might be in it?
Well, I don't think it matters what I want. And I don't think it matters what any Conservative wants right now. We've gone 3/4 of the year through this particular fiscal year, so the spending has already happened. But let's look at the future, and I agree, we do have to increase our defense spending. We obviously aren't going to make 5% by the end of 2025, probably more like 2030, and I support that. But I think there are some tough choices for Mr. Carney. And I'm not sure how he's going to handle all of them. You can't deliver all of these extras and not cut. So while we talk about school programs and so on, what's on the chopping block? And there are lots of things that are. But there won't be enough to be able to manage to keep the budget down to something reasonable. And the deficit, I should say.
One of the things that's come up is a number already that CBC is reporting that suggests that the amount of money coming in from counter tariffs is about $3 billion, and it was projected to be $20, which is what was promised earlier in the year. So, what's your sense of how worried you are about, as a Canadian, as a Manitoban, about what that deficit number could be?
Well, we've heard as much as $100 million. I don't know if it'll go that high. I don't know how we would sustain that. We've heard from the Parliamentary Budget Officer that we have hit the wall, and I think we should take that seriously. That's their job, to be as honest as possible and to be nonpartisan. So I am concerned, and I don't know how we're going to manage this. I do agree that we all have to find a way to support the best possible answers and to fight the ones that aren't going to work. We're going to have to make some tough decisions. I think Mark Carney's right about that.
Just before I move to Erin, Dan touched on a Manitoba piece which was wanting money for Churchill. As a Manitoban, what are you hoping for in the budget?
They've already spent $562 million between the province and the feds, and they've got nothing to show for it. So why do we have to spend money for those kinds of projects? Why can't that come from private investment? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the barriers, the trade barriers are so high, the development barriers are so high through the regulations in this country that doing something new is very, very difficult, and we can't get people to invest because it's a dead end for them.
I'm going to come back to you because, of course, one of your two parties, or the Bloc, although that doesn't look likely at all, has to support the government to have this go through. But let's turn to Erin for the NDP. What are you worried about in tomorrow's budget?
What I'm worried about is whenever I hear Liberal governments, Conservative governments talk about austerity, they forget who it is that has to pay that price. And it is working Canadians, it is families, and I want to make sure that they're remembered. When we're talking about spending in one area and cutting and we're all going to suffer, I know who that's going to be. That's going to be Canadian families. That's going to be working families. So I hope there's something in there for them. I agree this is an important budget. We've got a lot of things we need to look at, but we have to remember that people right now are having a hard time paying their rent. Yeah. They're having a hard time getting groceries on the table, and it can't get any worse for them. They need support.
You two are agreeing, so I just want to get them both on camera because that's...
Because it's never happened before.
It has.
Oh, it happens.
This morning, there was a specific interview we did about the cuts that were being forecast to the civil service and also what departments might sort of, what been the priorities. So one of the things that has come up is that the environment might be taking a back burner to some of that spending and to what happens in terms of strengthening, economic industry and build, and then also cuts to the civil service might be coming, which all the departments have been warned. Do you want to weigh in on that? Obviously, that's the NDP's bread and butter.
Young people especially are going to be furious to see once again we're ignoring the environment, because I live with a bunch of young people and that is one of their most important issues. But at the same time, I'm thinking people need to be able to put food on the table, and that's what I'm right now more worried about. When we talk about cutting jobs, I don't see how this helps the economy because people with jobs spend money. People without jobs need more support. So this is something that concerns me.
It's interesting because all three of you, though, were on the page of all of you have made a point of saying this is a different time and this is an important budget. And so given that it's an important budget, CBC is reporting this morning, Erin, that NDP senior source says that the path could be that some NDP MPs sit out the vote. They don't support the budget, but they sit out so it goes through.
I don't think any decision has been made, but right now, whether or not this budget passes is in Mark Carney's hands. If he makes a budget that people can live with, that people won't suffer needlessly, that he'll have support for the people who austerity hits the hardest, then that budget will pass. But if he only thinks about his bottom line, that's going to be tough for NDPers to agree to.
Conservatives, the party's leadership saying to CBC senior sources, they don't want the election, but they're also opposed to voting for the budget. How do you hope that your party does? How do you hope they, what the MPs do tomorrow? What are your hopes?
Well, I'll tell you what I would do if I were the premier or the leader. Yep. I would probably let some people stay out. This is not the time for an election. So, somebody might get sick or break their toe or their foot or something like that and can't come. Although today that's harder because they can vote by phone. But, it's going to be a difficult decision. I think it probably will rest at the end of the day with the NDP.
So you say not time for an election. What do you say, Erin?
I don't think that anyone wants an election right now.
By the way, we're the only one that can afford it. But
we're in a leadership race right now as well. So it's certainly not a prime time for us. But at the same time, it's our responsibility as NDPers to look out for average families, for working people, and we cannot sit by if they're the ones who are going to be hurt by the austerity.
Dan, I know you've been listening in.
Yes.
I'm not sure which point you want to weigh in on, so I'll just throw it back to you, and then I can refocus us here. If you want.
I agree. I don't think anybody wants an election, especially Canadians. Canadians do not want an election. We're in unprecedented times. People have to remember that Mark Carney's only been a politician. He's only been a prime minister for 6 months.
He's only been in the House, once?
Canadians elected him because they deemed that Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh were not mature enough to face this challenge. So that you've got to give Carney a chance. Nobody wants an election. Someone's going to get sick. Someone's going to lose their phone. I don't anticipate there's going to be an election. There's a lot of work to do. These are tough times, but that's why we elected Mark Carney 6 months ago.
But we didn't elect him with a majority, so he still has to play in the sandbox. Whether he likes it or not, he does have a responsibility to make sure that he's working with everyone. And from what I've seen, he hasn't been in the House. He's been all over the world, so he really doesn't build those relationships in the House right now.
Well, he's, part of being retired is that I can watch Question Period now. So I've seen Mark Carney in the House quite a bit, but I understand that he's the Prime Minister of Canada in tumultuous times for the world. So he's got to be out there. He's got to be opening new markets all over the world so that we can diversify our economy.
And he's got to be taking care of Canadians at home. He has to remember that austerity hits people who have the least.
So what does that look like? Because the two of you, Dorothy and Erin, have both been nodding emphatically when you're talking about the average Canadian taking care at home, even in the face of building up the economy and dealing with tariffs and dealing with the international turmoil. What is that going to look like in a budget line to say to you, okay, he's thought about people?
This is a few things for me. I mean, there's social support. I would love to see pharmacare expanded. I don't expect that we're going to see that this time. I want to see people have access to jobs, and that might mean training. We're talking about how Canada has to do more research. We can't do more research or more innovation if people aren't getting training. So we need to make sure there's access to education. There needs to be jobs. There needs to be, I'm good with infrastructure building because that actually creates jobs, but it also has to happen in places like Manitoba.
Dorothy, what do you need in the budget to prove to you that he hasn't forgotten the people that are having trouble make ends meet, the average Manitoban, if you will?
Well, as I said before, I think it's important that you allow new investment to come into the community. And we don't see that. You mentioned earlier that you think he might cut the environment. He's net zero, Carney. He's not going to cut the environment for sure. And in fact, that's one of the barriers, because instead of considering that this is a critical time where people can't get enough to eat and they don't have houses. And, you talked earlier about the housing situation in Manitoba. That's all part of the cause and effect. So as I said, it's going to be a difficult balancing act. I think what we're going to see is printing more money, which increases inflation, and we're going into more of the same. Now, when I say I don't think it's time for a budget, I don't think it's time for a budget or for an election now. Give it another 3 or 4 months, and I think we'll be ready for it. And there will be other opportunities. I just don't think this is the right time. After Christmas, in the spring, perhaps March, April, it'll be time, because people will be completely fed up by that time.
Dan?
I think jobs are important. There's been 152,000 full-time jobs created since March, 60,000 in the month of September alone. We have the lowest debt to GDP in the G7. We have the strongest credit rating in the world. And so we have the fiscal firepower to invest more in infrastructure, in defense, while at the same time keeping. I agree. We've got to create jobs, especially for young people.
More taxes? No. And people say,
think-
well, we can
I think
tax
That's a
the
valid
rich.
question.
I think we need to find a balance, and people, the cabinet and the prime minister have been putting in the time. They know the files in great detail, and we need to find that balance to create a strong Canada.
What is worth paying more taxes for, in any of your views? Dorothy, if we start with you, is anything worth it, or you're saying that's never the path? Ideologically, we need to just figure out a different way economically and go to the private sector.
Well, guess who gets hurt with more taxes? The people who have the least money. And I don't think that's the right way to go. So I think that we have to start looking at how we're spending our money, and first of all, the civil service. And they're talking about we want to cut all of the departments by 15%. Well, that's kind of an across-the-board idiocy. That is not going to happen. But we certainly need to reduce the number of civil servants. We've got 3-1 over what we had in 2015.
I want to ask each of you that provocative question, because at the end of the day, the pot of money doesn't change. So what is it worth asking Canadians to pay more tax on to increase to?
Well, that's a hard one to answer as a one-off, because I don't have all the information in front of me, but it's worth paying more for a strong, healthy Canada that has a good position in the world.
Erin?
It's worth having wealthy people pay more for sure, so that kids can eat, so that kids can go to school. That's worth it.
But they already pay more than anybody else. Taxes don't work. We have to open up the opportunities for people to get to invest in our country and to be able to create those jobs. Governments do not do a good job of that.
So this particular moment, everyone on the panel agreeing maybe not the moment to go to the polls, but also everyone agreeing that it's an important budget tomorrow. I pulled out 2 points of agreement in 20 minutes, and the rest will leave.
It's a record.
That's why you're partisan. Okay, thank you for all being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we'll find out later in the week what happens here. Well, tomorrow, budget comes down. Dan Vandal, former Liberal MP, Erin Selby, former NDP MLA, and Dorothy Dobbie, former Progressive Conservative MP. They are our partisan panel on CBC. Over to you, Manitoba. What do you need in the budget? What do you hope's in the budget? What do you fear is in the budget? 788-3205.